On the 15th of November 2009, millions of people settled in for a special episode of Doctor Who. David Tennant's 10th Doctor would travel to a human colony on Mars, where he would meet Captain Adelaide Brooke and her crew. Unfortunately, they were not alone on the Red Planet, as a deadly parasite living in the water was about to make itself known. This was the waters of Mars. As a seminal outing for the 10th Doctor, it's always a fun one to look back on. So let's do just that. I'm Ellie with Who Culture here with 20 things you didn't know about the waters of Mars. Number 20. It was almost set in a hotel. Remember the Series 6 episode The God Complex? The one set in the hotel with the Minotaur and David Walliams? Well, this is almost what the waters of Mars ended up looking like. Sort of. Russell T Davies' original plan for the episode was to revive an idea he'd had where the Doctor would travel to a strange hotel that had somehow caused Earth to be frozen in time. Unfortunately, RTD soon realised that his vision of the Doctor exploring an abandoned London would cost a lot of money and would be very complicated to pull off. So the hotel idea was shelved, and Stephen Moffat and Toby Whithouse developed a totally different hotel idea a few years later. Number 19. Andy was the android. Plenty of actors have played more than one character in Doctor Who, but few have a resume quite as varied as Alan Roscoe. Roscoe, who also appeared in the Star Wars franchise, plays Andy Stone in The Waters of Mars, one of the Bowie-based crew members who succumbs to the flood early on. This was the first time Who audiences had seen his face, as he'd previously appeared in a number of costumed roles, including a Slitheen, an Auton, and the best of the bunch, the question-asking, laser-firing android in Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways. This guy took down a couple of Daleks, but couldn't fight off some water? Weak effort. Number 18. Long-awaited November return. Doctor Who didn't have a regular series in 2009, instead releasing a handful of specials throughout the year. There were 2 Christmas specials at either end, an Easter special, a New Year's Day episode in 2010, and The Waters of Mars. This adventure dropped at 7 PM on Sunday the 15th of November 2009, making it the first episode since the show's 2005 revival to air in that month. The previous episode to air in November was the second part of Survival, the serial that closed out Doctor Who's classic run in 1989. November is, of course, a very significant month for Doctor Who, as the very first episode was shown on the 23rd of November 1963. Now, can the 60th anniversary specials please hurry up? Number 17. It was originally a Christmas special. Instead of airing on a random date in November, The Waters of Mars was originally going to debut on the 19th of December 2009, with the End of Time Parts 1 and 2 set for Christmas Day and New Year's Day. That's right, the original plan was 3 Doctor Who episodes over the festive period. What a gift that would have been. Unfortunately, as you'll find out a bit later on, the production of The Waters of Mars was all over the place, and so its air date got brought forward to November. This presented somewhat of a problem for Russell T Davies and co-writer Phil Ford, who had envisioned it as a Christmas-themed episode, with initial outlines of the story titled Red Christmas and Christmas on Mars. Ultimately, all Christmas references were removed from the script, and any hopes of seeing zero-gravity Brussels sprouts were scuppered. Number 16. The surface of Mars was seen in other episodes. As shocking as it may seem, this episode was not actually filmed on location on Mars. Instead, the Red Planet was created here on Earth at a place called Taft's Well in Wales, which unsurprisingly is a quarry. The Doctor Who team was clearly happy with this location, as this wasn't the only time they used it. Scenes in The End of Time were filmed there when it doubled up as the snowy surface of the Ood sphere. It would appear again under Matt Smith's Doctor as the rocky junk shop setting in The Doctor's Wife. Torchwood also got in on the action with several scenes in Children of Earth Day 2, including a scantily clad Captain Jack Harkness also appeared in this rocky area. Number 15. It was dedicated to Barry Letts. Just over a month before The Waters of Mars aired, the great Barry Letts passed away at the age of 84. Letts had served as the producer for Doctor Who during the entirety of Jon Pertwee's tenure as the 3rd Doctor, and was also involved in the casting of Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor. In making this decision, Letts would help create some of the most beloved moments in the show's history. Considering how much New Who owed to Letts, it makes perfect sense that The Waters of Mars includes a dedication to him just before the credits. A classy touch in honour of someone who was described by The Guardian as a pioneer of British television. Number 14. There were loads of financial issues. The Waters of Mars was conceived in 2008, and what else happened around this time? The world's economy fell apart. The impact of the global financial crash resulted in a shortage of funds for Doctor Who, and it was initially thought that the end of time would have to be shortened to 2 45-minute episodes instead of the proposed hour-long ones. The other option that was floated about was to abandon The Waters of Mars entirely, as it was deemed the least important of the remaining specials. Thankfully, executive producer Julie Gardner was soon able to secure funding, but the show's money problems were not over yet. The BBC made a mistake which led to some of the budget for Planet of the Dead going missing, so money was moved over from the Waters of Mars budget to compensate. This resulted in huge CGI water creatures being scrapped, and the villain instead became the viral infection known as the Flood. Considering how fantastic a villain the Flood is, I for one think that this whole ordeal definitely worked out for the best. Number 13. The GUSEU crater is real. There's so much sci-fi jargon in Doctor Who that when the show does include stuff that actually exists, it can be easily missed. One such example is the GUSEU crater, the location of Bowie Base 1 in the Waters of Mars. While that sounds like a word that could easily have been made up by one of the writers, it's actually a real feature of our red galactic neighbour. It was named after a Russian astronomer in 1976 and is approximately 90 miles wide, and was supposedly formed 3 to 4 billion years ago. Hopefully it's not actually harbouring a deadly soggy virus though. Number 12. Adelaide was nearly Russian. One of the best parts of The Waters of Mars is Captain Adelaide Brooke, played superbly by Lindsay Duncan. Firm but never unlikable, Brooke plays a pivotal role as the Bowie Base commander destined to die in order for her ancestors to go on to greatness. That is, until a certain Time Lord Victorious sticks his beak in. As the writers wanted Bowie Base 1 to feel multinational, Adelaide's character was almost a Russian cosmonaut named Valentina Kerensky. When Brooke became British, her initial name was Grace, until RTD pointed out that Grace was the name of the 8th Doctor's companion in the TV movie. She was soon renamed Adelaide, and her original Russian surname lived on in the form of actual Russian character Yuri Kerensky. Number 11. It was Graham Harper's final episode. Doctor Who has had plenty of legendary directors over the years, but there have been few on the level of Graham Harper. Harper first worked on Doctor Who as a production assistant in the 1970s. He directed his first serial, the beloved 5th Doctor regeneration story The Caves of Androzani, in 1984, and would work off and on with the classic series until it shut its doors in 1989. When it made a triumphant return, Harper was brought in to direct even more episodes, starting with Series 2's Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. He then helmed episodes like Utopia, Turn Left, and The Stolen Earth and Journey's End. I mean, what a filmography! Harper's final episode was The Waters of Mars, before he walked away as the only man to direct episodes of both classic and modern Doctor Who. Number 10. Several romantic subplots were cut. Ever wondered why Adelaide and her second-in-command Ed seem so frosty towards each other? Well, it's because they were supposed to be much closer than their ranks suggested. RTD has said that he originally intended for there to be more overtly romantic tones to Adelaide and Ed's relationship, but they were eventually cut. He changed Ed's last words to "you never could forgive me" to hint at this, while also leaving things up in the air. While the romantic feelings between Yuri and Mia were more prominent in the final cut, there were also more overt links between those two that were, you guessed it, cut for time. Number 9. Maggie was based on Helen Sharman. Played by Sharon Duncan Brewster, Maggie Kane is one of the most important characters in the story, acting as a sort of spokesperson / de facto leader for the Flood. Her magnitude with regards to the plot might be why she was partly based on such an important figure in British space travel, astronaut Helen Sharman. In 1991, Sharman became the first British person to go to space as part of a privately funded mission to the Russian space station Mir. The Doctor's flashback to Maggie's obituary shows that she was born in Greenside, Sheffield, and later studied chemistry at the University of Sheffield, two things that are also true about Sharman. Number 8. Lindsay Duncan set a companion record. Circling back to Lindsay Duncan now, who made a nice bit of history when she took on the role of companion for this episode. The writers wanted the Doctor's sidekick in this episode to be an older woman, instead of the much younger women that he'd been with in the previous outings. Duncan, who was 59 when this episode aired, became the oldest person to ever play the Doctor's companion, for about a month. Bernard Cribbins, who was 80 at the time, snatched the record from her when he teamed up with 10 in the very next special. Duncan would have probably been fuming, had it been anyone else but cuddly old Wilf, that is. Number 7. Mia and Yuri had a daughter. Both Mia and Yuri were spared their original fates when the Doctor broke his own interference clearance rules and rescued them from their exploding base. The last shot of them on TV is Yuri running after Mia as the gravity of the situation gets too much for her. But that isn't where their story ended. As revealed in the 2023 novelization of the story, which includes far more references to the couple's on-base romance, it's revealed that Yuri and Mia stayed together after their rescue and even had a child. They used this as an opportunity to honor their fallen comrade, naming their firstborn daughter Adelaide. Number 6. The Ice Warrior's absence. Upon watching The Waters of Mars, fans of classic Who might have wondered, where are the Ice Warriors? These chilling foes from way back in the day were also inhabitants of the Red Planet. They get a name drop during the episode, but why did they not have more to do on their home world? As it turns out, this question was answered in a deleted scene. While pondering the flood, the Doctor theorizes that, although the Ice Warriors were able to imprison it inside a glacier, they were not fully able to defeat it. This led to them fleeing Mars, leaving their menacing enemy behind for some other unfortunate souls to come across. Number 5. American audiences loved it. Doctor Who truly exploded overseas when Matt Smith took the reins, but still, Whovians across the pond couldn't get enough of David Tennant trying not to get wet, as the Waters of Mars premiere gave BBC America its biggest primetime viewing figures ever, with 1.1 million people tuning in. Granted, this was a fraction of what the episode did in the UK, but you have to take these small victories where you can, right? Number 4. Wall-E-inspired Gadget. Gadget, the remote-controlled robot the Doctor uses to save the day, might not have existed had another lovable machine not come along 1 year earlier. RTD was inspired to include an affable robot in this story after the success of Pixar's WALL-E, which released to massive praise in 2008. Gadget shares more than a few physical characteristics with his trash-compacting counterpart, right down to the tracks it uses to get around. In one early draft of the story, Gadget was meant to go berserk and attack the Doctor, but this was dropped in favour of the tin can coming to his aid instead. Gadget, gadget. Number 3. The Cloister Bell returns. The Waters of Mars takes quite a dark turn at the end, after Adelaide Brooke kills herself in order to keep her timeline intact. This essentially spells the end for the 10th Doctor, as his flagrant abuse of time travel law curses him to meet his maker. His impending doom is heralded by the arrival of Ood Sigma, and a sound that must have sent chills down the Time Lord's spine. And everyone's spine, come to think of it. That sound is the Cloister Bell, essentially a warning system inside the TARDIS. Though the bell had been used in New Who before, it can be heard in The Sound of Drums and Turn Left, for example, this was the first time since 1981's Logopolis that it had been used to signal the Doctor's death. Number 2. Helen Mirren almost played Adelaide. Yep, you heard me right. The role of Adelaide Brooke was originally considered for Academy Award-winning actress and all-round badass, Dame Helen Mirren. Can you imagine? Before the episode even had its proper name, RTD wanted Mirren to play the older woman who was teamed up with the Doctor. This is why Adelaide wasn't Russian, as RTD worried that this was too similar to Mirren's Soviet character in the film 2010, The Year We Make Contact. In the end, the stars didn't align and Mirren didn't appear in the episode. But the Waters of Mars would undoubtedly be remembered very differently today had the team managed to pull off this casting coup. But nevertheless, Lindsay Duncan did a terrific job playing Adelaide Brooke, and don't for one moment think that we're suggesting otherwise. Number 1. A real scientific discovery inspired the plot. There were 2 storylines in the running for this episode during its early days. RTD's Mars-based plot and the aforementioned hotel idea, which was written by Phil Ford. RTD eventually picked his idea partially due to a timely announcement made by NASA. Shortly before the 2 writers were set to meet to discuss the episode, it was revealed that NASA's Phoenix Mars lander had discovered frozen water on the surface of the Red Planet. RTD took this as a sign to push ahead with his idea and came up with the concept of a water-based monster for the Doctor to fight. Also inspiring the soggy nature of the story's villain was the animated water in James Cameron's seminal 1989 sci-fi flick The Abyss. Good thing the Phoenix didn't discover jelly on Mars instead. And that's everything for this list, but you just know we love to take deep dives into all sorts of episodes, so why not check out 20 things you didn't know about Heaven's Sent? In the meantime, I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.